So in a previous video, we were able to create our coin, our coin, yeah, inside of Blender, and we were able to texture it. And if you were to drag that in now, I have a Unity open right now, and if we were to drag that into Unity inside of our project folder name, whatever your project folder name is, and I'm going to put that in the meshes folder, and I'm just going to drag that in here. If you drag that in there and you see this extract material, but you don't see the extract texture, it's because we actually, in the previous video, I exported that FBX, but maybe you didn't have the same settings as I did. So one thing you want to be sure of inside of Blender when you're exporting that FBX. So I'm going to go to here. Let me export this again. So I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Export. I'm going to go here to FBX. And then I'm going to go over here to Path Mode. I'm going to push Copy. And then I'm going to click on this to where it says Embedded Files, Embedded Textures. So I'm going to include that. And then I'm going to hit Export. After you do that, then what should happen is, I'm going to remove this, is you should see something like this second version here that I exported with the included files. So it'll come up like this initially, but if you will then see this texture says extract textures. So I'm just going to click on that. It's going to ask me for a folder. I'm going to select the folder. And then after that, you'll see now I have the textures that I did inside of Blender here. And I could extract the materials as well. I mean, but the main thing was the textures. And so we have the textures that we want. Once we have that, now what we can do is we can take this item and drag it into the scene itself. Now I'm going to hit F. I'm going to center that. And now what I can do is resize it. And now I want to go ahead and add a script to this. So to add a script to an object here, I'm going to select that object. It's right here inside of the hierarchy. I'm going to select it first, and I'm going to go over here to the inspector, and I'm going to hit Add Component. Once I hit Add Component, the component we want doesn't exist because we're going to create it. So I'm going to hit Coin object or whatever you want, coins, coin, and I'm gonna click on New Script. It's gonna use that name that I stuck in there, and I'm gonna hit Create and Add. Once I do that, I have this coin script added to my object now. Now, in order to open this in Visual Studio, I'm gonna go inside of this script area right here, and I want to double click on that. All right, so this is what we should see. I'm going to remove these comments here. And the first thing I know I'm going to need for my coin is I want an audio sound to happen. So right when the person actually picks up the coin. So I'm going to do an audio source. And that audio source is going to be named audio source. And the second thing I think I'm going to need is I want it to rotate, so I'm going to make a public. So I want the user to be able to decide whether they want it rotating or not. So I'm going to make a public variable. And there's a Boolean, which is a yes or a no, or true or false, sorry. And to decide whether this object should be continuously rotating. So it starts off where it doesn't continuously rotate. And I'm going to make an audio clip. Coin sound, and that will be called coin sound. I'm gonna want this to be serialized. I want that to be a serialized field. So I feel like this needs a bit more explanation. In Unity, serialized field is an attribute that it can be applied to a variable. let's say a variable declaration like I'm doing right here in C sharp. Okay, so we're using C sharp, and this is basically the idea behind the whole serialized variable value. Serialization basically is the process of converting an object's state into a format that can be stored or transmitted. So that way you can store it or transmit it. And in this case, in Unity, serialized variables can be saved to, let's say, like a scene file or prefab, which we'll be using on a prefab, which makes it possible to preserve the value between the sessions in which the object will be saved, because we are actually serializing that object itself, and it can be viewable on the UI when the game is built. Yeah, so it's going to be in the serialized data, even though it's private, let's say. It's not a public variable. So when I first start, I'm going to go ahead and get that component off of the game object. So I want that audio source right away. And that's going to be get component audio source. That's the first thing I want to be able to do, because I'm going to need that audio source to be able to use it right when that game object starts and right when the game starts, actually. Secondly, what I'm going to need is in this update, which is a loop. This is what goes on. This is like the clock of the game. It's non-stop looping through this function here, the update function. So in that, I want to check to see if this continuous rotate here, which is supposed to be right there, this continuous rotate here is true. And if it is true, I want this transform, whatever object this is on, which is the coin object, I want the transform rotate to constantly rotate in vector 3 up. And I want, this is actually, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the axis in which I'm going to be using, which is vector 3 up, and then I'm looking at the angle, which is right here. That's the angle it's going to be. So that's basically the idea there. So the second thing I want to be able to do is check and see if the coin was hit. So I am going to use this element here, this block of code here. The private void on trigger enter. It's a Unity function that checks to see if this object was collided with something, and whatever it collided with will go inside of this variable, right? So what I want to do is I want to see if it collides with the transform of what I'm calling the base. And we don't have that yet, because that's going to be when I create the coin. I'm going to want a light in there, and I'm going to have the base object inside of the prefab. And that part of the prefab will be called the base. We'll look at that in a second. So let's go ahead and look at that right now, because this is all we need here. Okay, so we have the start, searching for the sound. We have the update that's going to constantly rotate, and then we have this on trigger, searching for the base. And if someone collides with that, then you go ahead and make that sound, and we're going to destroy the game object itself. So if you can find this on collision, then go ahead and put it into this object. If it's not nothing, which means it is something, we found something, and it was a collision, then go ahead and play this sound, one shot, meaning don't loop, and then destroy this coin object. So you got to play the sound first before you do the coin destroy, because otherwise you won't hear the sound. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to go back to Unity. And now I'm going to make the prefab that I was talking about. So with this selected here, I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to light, and I'm going to add myself a, let's say a point light. So I'm adding a point light to this. So here's my point light. You see how bright that is? So I can change the color of that point light with it selected. It's inside of this coin here. And I can go here to general, I can change any of this emissions, and the intensity I can make to 0.2 or something like that. 2, 3. Yeah. So I have this light and I have this unit, and what I'm going to do is call this unit base. And remember, that's what we were calling it inside of the code, and that's what I'm going to be searching for. Except I'm going to want this also to be inside of the main prefab. So I'm going to right click on this. And I'm going to create empty. I'm going to create an empty parent. And I'm going to call this parent coin. So now I have this, and I have this base, right? I don't need the point light in there. I can actually leave it like this if I wanted to. So now what I have, this object that has a point light, and it has this, what I call the base. And now I can take this and I can drag it in my prefabs folder. So in my Templar, prefabs, and I'm going to drag that coin in there. Now I have this prefabs folder, and now you can see I have this prefab here, and that prefab here has that coin script that we had on there. The problem is we don't want the coin script on the base. We want the coin script here. Why? Because when the script destroys this, we won't be able to hear the sound because it would be destroyed. But if we had the script on the coin and it destroyed this, the sound will continue to play because it's not destroying this. It'll just be destroying the base. So we need to take this script and we're going to remove it from there. And then we need to go up here to this coin and add that coin script. You can type it in here and it'll show up here, and you just add that coin script there. I'm going to click continuously rotate to yes. And then all I have to do here is go here and add the sound. Now you can go ahead and find some sounds and upload them here. But I think I have some sounds, and if not, I just have footstep sounds. Okay, so let's go ahead and get ourselves some sounds. But, you know, even without the audio right now, we should see our coin rotating. And to see that, we're just going to hit run. You can see our coin rotating. Now, if I run into it, I might get an error because it's going to try to play that sound. So I'm just going to wait till I get to the sound, and then I'll go ahead and run into it. So I'm going to hit the escape key and go up there. And now let's go ahead and get our sound. If you follow along from the previous videos, you would actually have a file and a folder called resources. In that resources folder, I have this HTML that you would have downloaded from the application that you would have ran to create your folders before, called links. In that links, you would have these links here. And at the bottom, you'll see that there's a link called free audio sounds. If you click on that, what that's going to do is that's going to send you to a particular website. Well, it should send you to a website. Called Free Coin Sounds Effects Download. So it's a Free Coin Sounds Effects Download, and it's Pixabay, right? And so what you can do here is you can, let's say here, this is one called Collect Coins. I'm going to go ahead and download that. Choose where you want to put your download. Make sure you remember. What I like to do is I like to put it directly into my folder where my project is being created. And that's basically my assets folder here. I'm using my assets folder. I'm just going to click on that and copy that address. And I'm going to go back here where I was saving that sound. And I'm going to paste that inside of the address bar up there. Now I'm in that folder, and I'm just going to save that collections there. Hit save. Okay, so once that's done, I now have that MP3 inside of my sounds folder, my resources, assets, audio, and sounds folder. I'm going to go ahead and take this and drag it into Unity, except I'm going to drag it into my audio sounds folder. Drag this in there like so. Now I am going to go back here to my coin, select the coin. I have here is saying there's an audio here, but what I need here is an audio source. So I'm going to type add component, and I'm going to add an audio source right there. And then in that audio source, I can go ahead and add this collect coin sound. So let me click on this coin again and drag this audio source right there. So after I drag that audio source there, I'm going to want to make sure that it plays on awake, which means as soon as this thing is instantiated, as soon as it's inside the game, I want it to play. And maybe I don't want it so loud, so maybe something like that. And then I'm going to take this and add it here, because this is going to be the coin audio sound, and that takes an audio clip. So instead of giving it the audio source, actually, I just want to give it the clip. I'm just going to make sure I have that selected and drag that audio clip inside of there, like so. All right, so now everything actually should work. So I'm going to hit play. So it played on awake when it first started. So here we go. So the problem that we're having right now is a simple problem of not actually having a collider onto our coin, right? So what I'm going to do is select this coin here, this base, not the base, but the main coin here. And I am going to go add, and I'm going to select a sphere collider, and I'm going to say is trigger. And then let's try to run that. And there we go. So we did it. We created a coin, we brought it into our game, we added some scripts to it, and so that way we put some lights to it, so some simple effect. We made it rotate, and we also added a trigger on there to where when the player runs into it, it actually makes the sound and it removes the coin from the game. There's one thing we have to be able to do now in order for us to be able to duplicate all the settings that we have here, including all our triggers and everything. We want to make sure that everything on here applies to the other prefabs, because for right now we've changed attributes on this prefab, but if you look, if I drag another prefab in there, this one will not have all the settings that I put in here. For instance, if you look at this new prefab I just brought in, first of all, the script is not in the main coin like it is on this one. Also, the base still has all that main script stuff. And also, the continuous rotate is not on there. So if I play, you'll see that this coin won't work, but this coin will. As you can see, the rotation is happening. Why is that? Well, because we made changes here, but we never propagated those changes to all of the prefabs. We just left it on here. So if you just wanted one prefab to remain that way and all the other ones to remain the original way, you could leave that. But if we wanted it to propagate throughout all the prefabs when we drag it in, we would select the one that we made all those changes on, and we would go here to overrides, select that, and go down here to apply to all. Now, this prefab has the exact, all the prefabs now, no matter how many I drag in, will have all of those changes. So I'm gonna hit play, and as you can see, they're all turning, and if I run into them, they'll all make the sound. So congratulations, you were able to complete an entire pipeline. You were able to add coins, you were able to add sounds, textures, going into Blender, and making your folder structures. And if you follow through all the way up to here, you're ready to go ahead and make a serious game. Obviously, it takes a lot more work and a lot more detail, but at least we went through the entire process from writing a story, making our folders, and making a game. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and I'll see you guys next time.